Welcome back, dancers and dance lovers. This is Athletistry Ballet Evolution. I am your host, Shane Werthner, and this is the podcast where we dive into the stories that have changed my life and hopefully will help you to evolve and become the best dancer that you can be. Today I'm going to be unfolding a story for you from a time in my life that was quite challenging, that changed the way that I approach things, but also was a testament to a lot of the training that I had as a student that helped me to push through challenges when they arose. Imagine this, guys. You're a 22-year-old dancer and you've basically been cast in 4 principal roles coming up in the next week and a half. And to get through these 4 principal roles, you have to go through a little bit of a challenge first, which is dancing the lead Hungarian officer in Macmillan's Meyerling. I had done this role many times at this point. It was the second year that it was being performed. I think I had done maybe 15 out of the 20 shows that had gone on for this performance, if not all of the shows. I think there was one other guy who was doing the role, but I can't remember if he got injured or was moved out of it for some reason. And this was one of the last shows, and I think I was scheduled to do Anna Karenina, Nutcracker. There were other productions that were coming up with other main roles, and I just had to get through this. And I remember being called into the director's office and him saying, look, we're a little bit concerned because you do have a lot on your plate right now. Would you like us to take away, maybe we can take away Meyerling, we can put someone else in, and you'll be in good condition for your principal roles coming up. And I remember thinking to myself, no, I think I'm strong and I have the capability and I want to prove that, I deserve to be at the level I'm at and that I have the ability to kind of shoulder this weight and this responsibility of doing all of the things that I've been originally cast for. And we get into the show and the first act goes quite well, it's quite easy. And the second act opens up. Now imagine the scene, guys. It's a tavern. There's prostitutes on stage, and there's officers, and there's not actual prostitutes. Obviously, the ballet dancers are playing the roles, but we've got people pretending to smoke and drink and play on the side, and it's a quite intensive scene. And at one point, the lead Hungarian officer steps out and he has to dance this rather intense, fast solo. And it finishes with a double saut basque en dedans. And I remember going up into the jump, everything was great, things were really good, felt strong, and then I landed it and it landed right over the outside of my foot. So it's like my foot didn't get the right alignment in the air and I just kind of got that over the side of the foot. Immediately shooting pain goes through my ankle. I kind of right myself, stand up. I have to run back into the center of the stage, dip Mitzi Casper, who's one of the lead prostitutes in the scene, and then pull her back up. And I remember when I dipped her, I was supposed to kiss her, and I just screamed out some expletive, kind of under my breath, but loud enough probably that half the stage heard it anyway. And I pulled her back up, and I could just see this fear in her eyes. And I must have had the same fearful expression because this pain was starting to resonate farther and farther up my leg. And I ran back off to the side of the stage where there was this little podium that I could kind of hide behind, where there were papers that I was supposed to gather and bring out to hand out to people that were kind of like supposed to be propaganda for the Hungarian emancipation. And I didn't do it. I remember handing them to someone else and say, guys, you need to take this out because I don't think I can walk back out to the center of the stage. I was feeling so much pain in my foot. And I think there was also this fear because I knew that the next thing that I was going to have to do was a rather intensive pas de cinq with the other 3 Hungarian officers and Mitzi. And it's really fast, a lot of partnering, a lot of jumps. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I have 2 options. Either I say to them right now, you need to stop the show, I can't go out and do this, or I push through it, grin and bear it, and just make it happen. And so I got back up, I limped around to the other side of the stage. I remember everyone saying, are you okay? Can you do it? Are you okay? And I was like, yes, I'm fine, let's do it, let's go. And so I did it. I remember the pain moving from my foot up to my calf, up to my knee, up to my quadricep. Like every other muscle in my body was trying to alleviate the pressure and the pain through my foot and my ankle. And somehow I made it through. I don't even remember a lot of it, but I just remember this immense. I'd never had such a cramp in my quadricep as I had that night doing that performance. And your brain is kind of half in it, half not. Like you feel like you're floating outside yourself, trying to figure out what steps are gonna still be doable, what steps can you change, how can you do this on the other side, potentially to not risk injuring on the same landing and injuring the same foot more. And so I got through it somehow. I got through the coda. I even got through the next part with this gunshot, and I get off stage and I just feel like all the blood rushes out of my body. I feel like I'm about to pass out. You kind of get that nauseous feeling. And I remember the ballet masters coming backstage and saying to me, hey, are you okay? Do you think you can go on? We saw it from the audience. It didn't look very, very good. Like, we know that there's something going on. What's going on? So I said, I don't know. I rolled over my ankle. I'm not sure how bad it is. I'm not feeling very good right now. Probably better if I don't go on for third act. So they called an ambulance. And as I was being wheeled out, this was right as the director was about to change in Vienna. As I was being wheeled out, I come face to face with Manuel Legris, who was about to be our next director. And I just remember seeing the look on his face of kind of disappointment, but almost expectation that, they pushed him too hard, he did too much. It was bound to happen. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is going to not play out well for my start with a new director. Like, I've probably injured myself beyond, being able to dance next week in these other roles that I was supposed to be doing, which he was going to be watching to see, even to kind of assess where my dancing was as a member of the company. And ended up getting to the hospital, doing the x-rays, and I had fractured my 5th metatarsal. Now, there's a couple of lessons that we can take from this, because it's not obviously just an easy option when you're on stage to say, okay, stop guys, I'm hurt, I can't go on. And this happens often in dance, where we end up in situations that are challenging, that create pain or that create difficulty that we have to push through. And I've seen a lot lately in students where instead of rising to the occasion of whatever challenge they've been given, they'll often change a step, or they'll stop doing the combination, or they'll shake their leg out when they should have tried to hold the balance for a little bit longer. And it's almost like instead of rising to the challenge and pushing themselves beyond what that challenge is giving them, they give up in the moment. And there, a lot of it is fear, right? Like, a lot of it comes from this point of the unknown, because that's where fear comes from, not knowing whether you can do it, not knowing what the outcome will be if you attempt it. If you attempt it and you hurt yourself, if you attempt it and you look silly in front of your peers or your teachers. And so oftentimes what will happen is students will sit in that comfortable space, and they won't push themselves beyond, and they won't challenge themselves to do the things that are not easy and not comfortable and not what they feel that they are already quite capable of doing. Now, the problem with this is that when you're faced with a situation later on in life where you have to figure out how to get through a broken foot on stage, or a choreographer is asking you to do a step you've never done before, or your director is putting you into a role that is way above your capability at that point, but wants to see how you rise to the challenge. These are defining moments. These are moments that can make or break a career potentially. And so pain, there's a lot of talk right now about pain in dance and how we shouldn't push through pain. And I think there needs to be nuance around this discussion, because it's not just about physical pain. Sometimes it's mental struggle. Sometimes it's knowing the difference between, are my muscles just sore from doing this very difficult variation or combination, or is this actually detrimental injury pain, right? And so what I think needs to happen to help dancers to understand that this evolution has to be embraced is to know the difference between something that is causing you detriment, that is going to harm you, and something that is actually going to improve you, because they're two different things. Struggle is necessary. We have to go through a struggle in order to get better. If you don't struggle, you will not improve. All right? That being said, if you are in so much pain from overuse or chronic stress, or potentially even injuries that are not being addressed because you're afraid that by addressing those injuries, you may be looked at as weak or inferior, that is also a problem. And teachers are potentially guilty of not understanding, not even knowing sometimes. Like, the communication is often not there because of the power dynamic. Students will feel like they don't have the ability to advocate for themselves, which is definitely something that needs to happen. If you are in pain that is injury based, we need to know about it as your teachers. Your directors need to know about it. And I would hope that at this day and age that we have come to a time where people will be accepting and understanding of that, and not put people down for having injury, because injury can happen, especially traumatic injury, where one moment you're fine, the next moment you're limping off stage, and it was nobody's fault except fate, right? So in the case of what I went through, it proved to me, first of all, that I needed to be smarter about my career, that just accepting everything that was thrown at me was not going to be the best solution for how I go forward, right? And I think, in that instance, I learned that the challenges that come at us are there for a reason, right? Like the things that make us suffer or struggle are there to teach us a lesson. Now, at that point, I hadn't figured out when to say yes, when to say no, and it became very apparent to me that there are going to be times when you have to say yes to things and no to things, and refuse certain opportunities if they're actually not going to develop you. Now, at the same time, if your teacher is asking you to lift your leg higher, or to hold your leg for one more count, or to finish the combination, or to not fall out of your turns, that is not a struggle that should be overlooked. That is not something that you should say, I can do this anyway. I don't need to practice, or I don't need to improve here. Everything can be improved. There is always room for improvement in everything that you do. But what has to be understood is the difference between pain from injury and pain from challenge. Okay. Now, I often will ask myself, what if I had done things differently? What if I had said, okay, I'm not going to do miling and I'll just do the other roles? Now, it could have been even more detrimental, because I could have had maybe a weakness or an overuse at that point, that had I gone on to do Nutcracker or Anna Karenina, which were much more challenging roles, that I could have actually, fallen out in the middle of one of those performances, or hurt myself in the middle of one of those performances, and then they would have had to have completely restarted the show, or brought in someone to replace me. So it was fortunate, I think, that it happened in the way that it did, because it taught me the lesson of how to persevere and push through challenges, because, as always, the show must go on. But it also helped me to learn that not everything needs to be pushed through when it comes to pain being detrimental. Okay. So what are the things that we can learn from this? What are the lessons that we can take and carry on for those of you who are learning right now? One thing that I will often relate dance to is performance, in the sense that your classwork, the work that you do when you're in the studio, when you're with your teacher, it's like a rehearsal. And it's not necessarily a rehearsal for a role or repertoire or a performance, but it's a rehearsal for how you will approach your work. And you have the opportunity every time you go into class to approach your work more diligently, with more excellence, with more discipline, with more confidence. And if you do that, if you follow through with that, you will find that the challenges that you face are less. So one story I like to tell is, often I will see dancers put their legs down in adagio. It's one of the hardest things, really, to hold your leg, stand on one leg, especially in center. And they'll put their legs down. And I'll say to them, now imagine, girls, that you are one of the shades in La Bayadere, and you're coming down a ramp, and you have to do 38 arabesques coming down that ramp. And then you're the first girl at the very front who has to do a développé écarté and hold for 16 counts. And you are exhausted, so you put your leg down. There are 32 girls behind you that didn't put their leg down, but you did. And where does everyone's eye go to when that leg comes down too soon, or when it comes down 2 or 3 counts before someone else, or you wobble a little bit because you can't hold the position? It all goes to you. And potentially in rehearsal, they'll stop and they'll start again. But on stage, everyone's eyes go to the person who doesn't fit into having been able to push through that challenge. And so think of your classwork as an opportunity to improve yourself by learning how to push through the challenges. The mental fortitude in order to get through the things that you will inevitably come up against in your life. Because undoubtedly there will be times when you feel like you don't want to do what you have to do, when dance is not bringing you all of the joy that you once felt it did. But those are seasons, right? Like, they don't last forever. You're not always going to be unhappy, and sometimes we just have days that are rough. But if we show up and we continue to prove to ourselves that we can show up regardless of whether it's raining or sunny outside, that's when we prove to our mind that we have the ability and the power to overcome and to stay strong and to develop and improve consistently. Now, I just want to leave with one last thing. If you are injured, if you do have something where you've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and maybe you're fatigued or you're overwhelmed or you are injured, you need to speak up. You need to talk to the people who are able to help you. You need to see a physio. You need to see a doctor. You need to talk to the directors and say, look, my workload right now is a lot. I need to pull back on something. And odds are they will welcome that honesty, because a lot of times we don't know. And the people at the front of the room just expect you to continue to push, because that's the expectation in this field. And if you are honest with them and say, look, I'm struggling right now, I need a little help, or some support here, or maybe I can come out of some role and go in later, or maybe I need to take a week off to see a doctor to get some recovery. These are all things, guys, that we need to help as leaders, as leaders in companies, as leaders in schools. We need to help our dancers understand that it's okay to come and talk to us. But barring any of that, barring any injuries, then we also need to help them to develop that strength and that discipline to be able to continue to improve and develop and become the best version of themselves. So, all of that being said, thank you guys for listening. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I would like to ask that if this helps you guys, if you are enjoying listening to these stories and you're getting a lot out of it, and you're learning from my experiences, to please share with people that you think would also benefit from this, because it's really important to further the conversation, to continue the discussion, to help those who may be struggling right now. Maybe there are people out there who don't know how to ask for help, who don't know how to go out and get the support they need for an injury. Or maybe there are people who feel like they want to push themselves harder, but they don't know how to do it. Or there's fear around not being successful, and so they don't put themselves outside their comfort zone. Cheer those people on, help them. Help them to grow and develop. We are all in this together. We are all in this to improve. And if we take those who may seem less confident aside and say, look, you got this, you can do it, go try it. Like, I'll try it with you. Let's go together. I'll hold your hand. We'll work together. I think we'll all find that we improve together, we become better together, we become stronger together, and we all lead this life of excellence into our dance and then outside into our daily lives as well. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been Athletistry Ballet Evolution.